meeting, and then it will start recording. Morning, everyone.
So it's 10 o'clock. I can see that people are just starting to join us. The numbers are creeping up. So if it's okay, I'll just hold on for a minute or two to allow people to join.
Please pop your cameras on as well if you feel comfortable to do so. Nice to see some faces. And just a reminder, the session will be recorded and put onto our YouTube channel afterwards. So if there are any colleagues that couldn't attend today, they'll be able to watch it afterwards.
Okay, so I think we'll make a start. Bore da pawb, good morning everybody, and a really warm welcome to this Best Start in Life webinar on how professionals in Gwent, early years professionals in Gwent, can support secure attachments with babies and young children. And I'm sure most of you will know that healthy attachments between carers, babies and young children are essentially a foundation block. They're an essential building block for all healthy baby and child development. So I'm absolutely delighted to be joined this morning by Belinda Leiden, who is a music therapist and a trainee parent-infant psychoanalytic psychotherapist, working in the Gwent parent-infant mental health service, the PIMHS service. And Belinda specialises in working in the antenatal period up to 2 years of age, and has a particular interest in infant observation, developmental risk in parental-infant relationships, and I really love this, Belinda, encouraging families to sing to their babies. So we're so pleased that Belinda's able to join us this morning to share her experience, her expertise, and to inspire us further in terms of what else we can do to be supporting those critical, secure attachments between carers, babies, and young children. I'm sure I just want to say one or two more things about how the session will run. For those of you that have joined before, it's a similar sort of plan. So Belinda will present for sort of 45-50 minutes, and then there'll be an opportunity for you to ask any questions and a little bit of discussion at the end before we finish at 11 o'clock. For those of you that haven't met me already, I'm Errol Powell. I'm one of the public health consultants in the Nire and Bevan Gwent public health team, and the Gwent lead for giving every baby and child the best start in life. So pleased to see you here this morning. Thank you for prioritising this in your very busy diaries. If you are able to put your cameras on, it's always nice for presenters to see that there are real people there listening, and that there is definitely an audience there. So we would really appreciate if you're able to do that. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to hand the virtual mic over to Belinda. Thank you.
Thank you, Errol. Okay, let me share my screen before I get started. Oh, sorry, it's gone straight in.
It's jumped straight to the video.
Straight, yeah. At least it's showing sound, so that's good. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to sharing my thoughts with you about babies in particular and how we can help support their relationships. So as Errol said, I'm Belinda Leiden, and I'm a therapist in the Gwent Parent Infant Mental Health Service. And I'm a music therapist by background, and I'm just about to qualify as a psychotherapist who specialises in parent-infant relationships. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, I will mention PIMHS a little bit later on, but we're a specialist team who work with parents and babies. I'll give you a bit more information about them at the end. So very fortunately, this webinar has actually fallen in Infant Mental Health Awareness Week, which is very timely. And it means that there's actually lots of resources out there at the moment about why we need to hear the voice of babies and how meeting their emotional and their relational needs from the very beginning is so important for their lifelong health and well-being. So the theme of this year's Awareness Week, which is a national event run by the Parent Infant Foundation, is attunement, which we will have a think about shortly. So this morning, I hope that we will have an understanding of how secure attachment develops through everyday interactions, recognise infant cues and the importance of the voice of the baby, hear about the role of attunement and sensitive caregiving. And I also want to give you some practical strategies that you can use to support parent-infant relationships, whatever your role is. So the important message that I want to give today is that small interventions and moments can have a really big impact. But to begin with, I would like us to try and put ourselves into the perspective of an infant. So if we could use the chat function to type in whatever comes to mind. So I want you to imagine that a 3-month-old baby could speak. What might they say helps them to feel safe, understood, and loved? So please write whatever comes to mind. It might just be one word into the chat box, please.
Can you see the chat, Belinda?
I can't, so you might have to shout out some.
I'll shout them out for you. Cuddles, eye contact, physical touch, smiles, touch, eye contact, calmness, skin warmth, kisses, cwtches, love the Welsh, being talked to, being held, touch, gosh, right, trying to say this word, reciprocity. You all know what I'm trying to say. Emotional warmth, singing, talking to me, being soothed, cwtches, skin to skin. A lot of similar themes here.
Yeah, really lovely. I'm loving the focus on cwtches and cuddles. So and lots about touch, isn't it? About that kind of the warmth, the physical touch, and what that might bring from an emotional perspective. So yeah, absolutely lovely. Thank you, everybody. So of course, 3-month-old baby doesn't speak, but babies are telling us all of these things and more every single day. They just don't use words. So they use their gaze, their movements, their cries, their smiles, and their behaviour to communicate to us what they need to feel safe, understood, and loved. And our role as professionals is to help adults to hear the voice of the baby. So it's really important to remember that babies do remember, babies do feel. The body remembers even when we can't consciously recall those early experiences. So we all know that babies are not passive recipients of care. They actively communicate their needs, they influence the relationships that they're in, and they signal to us when they're ready for something or when they're feeling more stressed, and they seek that connection from the very beginning of life. So let's think for a moment about what secure attachment is. So secure attachment develops when caregivers are available, responsive, predictable, and emotionally present. Research highlights the role of responsive caregiving, emotional attunement, co-regulation, and connection, and safe, stable relationships. So they're all the kind of fundamentals of a secure attachment. And within this, it's really important to point out that parents, they don't need to be perfect. So in fact, babies need them to be good enough. We are all human and we can't be completely perfect, meeting every need exactly at the right time. And actually these misattunements or slight missteps in the relationship are actually really important for baby's development of resilience. So it's actually needed that there's these slight little ruptures. And so what's really important is that parents are striving to meet their baby's needs, but also if they do cause a slight rupture, the important part is in the repair. So why does this focus on secure relationships matter? I will touch on this briefly at the beginning, so just to go a little bit further with that. So it's not just because babies are small and vulnerable. It's because the first 1001 days of life is a unique window of opportunity to influence lifelong health and well-being. So every opportunity to strengthen attunement, to strengthen the sensitive caregiving and our delight in babies, the cwtches, all of the delight and pleasure and play is also really important. It all contributes to a secure attachment, which has an impact on their lifelong health. So here are some of the reasons why this is so important that have been found out in research. So we know that the brain develops more rapidly at this time than any other. And those neural pathways are being shaped through the relationships and experiences that babies are having. It's the time when their stress regulation systems are developed and the foundations for emotional well-being and also their mental health are laid down. And these early relationships become a template for their future relationships. So it's a really, really critical time. So that's why this matters so much at this particular stage of life. So in this way, relationships are not extra in early childhood development. It's not something that goes alongside other things. It's actually, a relationship is the mechanism for development. So early relational experiences shape how children learn, how they regulate, how they connect, and how they develop over time. So I really want to emphasize something we all know, but I think it's always good to remember that babies develop in relationships, not alongside them, but in them. And a key part of this and of secure attachment is also emotional regulation. So we're not simply talking about babies feeling happy and loved. One of the most important functions of attachment relationships is helping babies to learn to manage their emotions. So they're not born able to regulate their feelings independently. They rely on adults to help them make sense of overwhelming experiences, to soothe their distress and return them to a state of calm. I think lots of you actually mentioned calm when you were thinking from the experience of a baby. So over time, these repeated experiences then become the foundation of emotional regulation. And this is one of the reasons why secure attachment is such a powerful public health intervention. So emotional regulation is linked to later mental health, our relationships, our learning, our resilience, and also our physical health. So I'm going to now play a video by Peter Fonagy, and I'm going to play a series of videos so you don't just have to listen to my voice the whole time. He describes this really well. So it's about a 4-minute video.
I don't think we can hear the sound on there.
Can't hear the sound? Shall I wonder if I stop sharing, make if I did include the sound. Sorry, everybody. Oh, there we go.
Children
Perfect.
after 6 months, we now know,
Yeah.
long before they become verbal, look around and try and figure out what it is that the person that they're interacting with knows or doesn't know. And they will adjust their action in terms of what they think is going on in that person's mind. So long before they can use language, they're already interested in the mind of others. And they even more than that, they expect others to be interested in them. I can give you some striking examples from research work that we have done, but also research work that others have done. So if a child, even at the age of 6 months, is confronted by an adult who doesn't respond to them, who shows them what Edward Tronick had called a still face, a non-responsive face. Having been in interaction with that baby previously, that child will be tremendously distressed. And that's really quite a universal experience. They will expect the person to react to them contingently, react to them in a meaningful way, depending on what they have been doing, because they want to find themselves in the other person. They want to find someone who mirrors them, who reacts to them, because they do not start, none of us starts out knowing who we are, knowing what we are. We are interested in others mainly in order to find out about ourselves. And what happens in the first 3 years of life, perhaps more important in that period than any other, is that we find out about the nature of our own minds, the nature of our thoughts and feelings in the relationship that we have with others. So I don't know when I'm smiling or I'm laughing as a baby, what that experience is, what's the meaning of that experience is. If I see my emotion being responded to by someone who mirrors it, I see that experience outside of myself. I can then take it back, and that gives meaning to all the sensation I had in relation to my happiness. But it's even more important when I feel anxious or when I feel sad. If I feel sad, I feel distress, I feel disorganized, I can feel lost in the world, lost in all my experiences. But there is my mum or my dad who responds to me with a reaction that indicates that they are aware of how I feel. I can look at them. I actually take into myself that representation of sadness, and that helps me organize myself. Now I know what I feel. This is what we call emotion regulation. This is how we come to be able to regulate our emotions. So paradoxically, even though I now know perfectly well when I feel anxious or when I feel sad, the anxiety that I recognize as my anxiety is actually not my own anxiety, but is my picture of my mum looking back at me when I, as a baby, felt anxious. So if my mum wasn't there, if my mum ignored my anxiety, then I will find it far more difficult to come to organize my emotions.
Okay, so I think it's really important what Peter Fonagy is saying then. I think that attachment, so it's not about preventing children from experiencing difficult emotions. It's about ensuring they don't have to face these emotions alone as they grow, and that begins right in the early days of life. So at the heart of secure attachment is quite a simple but profound experience, really. It's about being seen. So that baby needs to be seen and understood and heard. So let's now focus on an element of this, so attunement. So secure attachment develops in thousands of small moments every day, not a few just big perfect moments. It's very much about the everyday moments, and it's about tuning into babies that we are building this moment by moment with them. And it can be in eye contact, sharing smiles, talking, reading, singing together, comforting them, soothing them, following their lead in play. This slide here sort of tells us a little bit about why attunement is so important. So it says, when you tune into how I'm feeling, it helps me to develop and grow my brain, to develop social and emotional skills, these building blocks for my lifelong well-being and my mental health. It shapes how I see myself, other people and the world, understand how I use my senses, move, focus, think, and learn to talk. So this is why we know that attunement is important. But what does it look like? Or more importantly, what does it feel like to an infant? So this video is actually a video that the PIMHS team have just put out for this week, actually. So it's brand new. So we're going to hear about it from the infant's perspective.
My daddy watches me closely. He looks at my face and my body and helps me with my words for my feelings. It's like he knows how I feel on the inside. This helps me feel calm and safe. When I am sad or upset, my mummy looks at me kindly. This makes me feel heard and understood. When I am happy and playing, my grown-up smiles and plays along with me. They are happy to be with me just as I am. This helps my brain grow and helps me feel more confident.
So we've heard what that feels like for the baby. So just to reiterate, it's about being in tune with baby moment by moment and noticing their little signals and responding to what they need. And when you're attuned, you start to understand their feelings and what they're trying to tell you and who they are as a unique little person. So it's in these small everyday moments. So I've got another video.
Baby Rosie is enjoying a joyful conversation with her mum. It all starts with some mutual gazing. Mum stays quiet and watches Rosie carefully, giving her lots of time. Rosie begins to coo and smile at her mum, and they take turns talking and smiling. Mum slows her voice down and gently exaggerates the pitch and tone to engage Rosie. Turn-taking conversations are important for baby, and fun and laughter help the baby's brain to develop. It's important to remember that babies are only ready to engage when they're in the quiet, alert state. Interaction can be very intense for a baby, and they may need to look away for a moment. Here, Mum waits while Sophia takes a break, giving her time to look again when she is ready to pick up the conversation. Let your baby initiate interaction, giving them time to engage when they are ready.
Yeah, make them smile. Make them smile.
Okay, so you could hear there was a real emphasis on the waiting and the slowing everything down, which I'll come to talk about a bit later when I'm sort of giving you some tips, I guess, on how to be with families. Everything that you're seeing with the parents and the babies kind of translates to how we need to be as professionals as well. So I'm now going to draw out some elements of this from the baby's perspective and what's important for them in their relationship. So these are some of the fundamentals of a secure attachment that we can support. So these slides are coming from the voice of the baby again. So being accepted. So that's a key message here, isn't it? About seeing the unique baby in front of you, not this imaginary baby or the baby you thought you might have, but actually tuning into your actual baby. So I might not be the baby you imagined, but I'm a unique person with my own way of being in the world. Take time to get to know me, my likes, my needs, my expressions, my little ways. It will take time for us to get to know each other. I don't need you to be perfect, just to keep trying. And then babies need to be related to. So I'm ready to interact with you from the moment I'm born. These interactions grow my brain. I love to look at your face and have conversations with you. I also love it when you just listen to the noises I make and reflect them back to me. Watch for my response to everything that you say and do. Babies like to be followed and played with. So I love it when you play with me, and especially when you take time to notice what I'm interested in. The world is all new to me, help me to explore it. I really enjoy taking turns to interact and also need time to look away and take a break. Relax and enjoy being with me. This makes me feel loved. I think that aspect about when babies look away is really important, recognising that they're not withdrawing from interaction. They actually sometimes need that interaction, that they need that break in the interaction, because it's really exhausting for them to be in that close interaction all the time. Feeling safe, this is a really important one for a secure attachment. So I feel safe when you are gentle and predictable. I can feel when you are angry with me. It's okay to ask for help. Please look after yourself. This will help you to look after me. So they're bringing in the importance of parents being supported and looking after themselves in order to be there for their babies. It's really fundamental. Babies need to be comforted and understood. So I don't yet use words, but I'm trying very hard to tell you what I need with my actions. Guessing what I am needing or feeling and then saying it aloud gently can soothe me. Sometimes you being with me, your smell, touch and warmth is all I need, even if I don't stop crying immediately. And then finally, this one about transitions and separations. This might be particularly useful if you work in a nursery or an early years setting where babies are a little bit older and have now started to separate from their family. So when you need to leave me with someone, choose someone who wants to be with me and is safe, attentive and kind. I will be okay when you leave me. I just need someone to understand that parting is hard and will help me to feel safe until you come back. When you can leave me with the right person, I will be fine and we will both feel happy and relaxed when we see each other again. So this one really emphasises actually our role as professionals, doesn't it? That actually we need to be that safe, attentive, kind person, particularly if we're in sort of sole care of babies. But even when we're with parents and babies together, we also need to be that kind of secure base and that secure relationship for the family. So all of this is just emphasising that attunement supports good infant mental health and it helps babies to feel safe and loved. And I've got one, this is the last video I've got before we go into talking about what we can do. So this one emphasises particularly how it's so important to see the unique babies in front of us and their particular likes and dislikes. And sometimes that can take a little bit of time to get to know a baby.
All babies are different, and early on parents begin to get to know their own baby's likes, dislikes and sensitivities. Understanding and responding to baby as a person can help parents and babies tune into each other. When babies feel their needs are understood, they feel safe and a sense of well-being. Getting to know baby's individual characteristics helps baby to begin to develop a sense of who they are. Baby Amber has already discovered her favourite tree hug position, and her mum reflects on how her baby feels when she's in this position.
Holding a baby like this, they feel very, very safe. They feel protected and warm, and the heat helps incredibly. She'll sleep for a long time like this. This is her favourite tree hugger position, as we call it. She can feel my heartbeat, and I can feel hers. Are you listening? Hello? Are you listening? I think it reminds me when she was inside my tummy. The same sounds you could hear.
Okay, so most babies want to respond sensitively to their baby. And I guess so far we focused on all the kind of lovely, what we would like it to look like. But of course, we know that there are going to be barriers to this. So I'm going to take a little bit of time now to think about what they are, and you might start reflecting on what you see yourself in your practice. So the question is not whether parents care, but what it is that sometimes makes it really difficult to hear the baby's voice. What are some of the potential barriers to that? So the first one I've thought about is parental stress. So when parents are stressed, this can really narrow our attention and it makes it harder to be emotionally available. And sources of stress might include financial pressure. Of course, we're in a cost of living crisis, housing difficulties, relationship breakdown, work demands, caring for multiple children or caring for other relatives, and a lack of support. And when parents are overwhelmed, they have less capacity to then notice subtle infant cues. We can acknowledge this with families by saying something like, it's really hard for you to be curious about your baby's experience when you're struggling to manage your own. Parental mental health can affect a parent's ability to read and respond to their baby's signals consistently. I mean, having a mental health difficulty absolutely does not prevent secure attachment, but it may just mean that parents need that additional support. This is a really big one, is technology and distraction. So of course we live in a world where technology is used. And I think the main barrier here is when technology is repeatedly interrupting those serve and return interactions or those opportunities for connection. So for example, feeding while scrolling on your phone, missing those cues for interaction, the reduced eye contact that comes with using technology, and those kind of frequent interruptions during play. However, we can also acknowledge that phones are a source of support. It's a way of reducing isolation for parents. It's giving them access to information and services. So, technology is a part of modern parenting. So I think the challenge is helping parents to create moments where their baby has their full attention. So recent research has actually suggested that as long as the parent consistently repairs with the baby once they've put their phone down, that this is good enough. So it's kind of really emphasizing that, yes, you're going to be distracted sometimes, but actually once you've finished being distracted, put your phone down and then repair with your baby and give them your full attention. And another aspect of technology that could get in the way of this is, and which we are starting to see more of, is an over-reliance on apps and monitors. So, for example, putting your baby to sleep at a certain time because the app tells you it's the end of their wake window and now they need to have their sleep, rather than tuning into the actual baby in front of them and learning and reading their cues. So that's something that we're trying to encourage parents to trust their relationship with their baby and their instincts and what they're seeing, rather than an over-reliance on technology. Sometimes parents can have an unrealistic expectation of their baby, for all sorts of reasons. They may not have had much contact with babies before. They don't understand that babies do cry and that's a normal part of their development. They might not understand sleep patterns, the developmental behaviour, regressions. And when this behaviour is misunderstood, our responses can become less sensitive. So, for example, increased crying might not always be a problem to solve, but it could be the baby communicating about something that's going on for them developmentally. So it's coming back to that kind of education and care and support that parents need to understand what babies are trying to tell us. Parents' own attachment histories. Many parents are drawing on their own experience of being parented, which can make parenting much more emotionally complex. And the truth is that for all of us, our baby's needs may at times overwhelm us. They can put us in touch with our own unmet, unresolved baby needs. And sometimes parents need to hear that it does feel like this sometimes, and that's okay, and they can be supported with it. And then social isolation is also another factor. So this can increase parental stress and reduce their confidence in their parenting. Again, why early years professionals can be so important. And then the final barrier I've put here is poverty and inequality. So when we're facing these factors, our emotional resources may be stretched, and the pressures around this can then create barriers to that calm, responsive, interactive parenting that supports secure interaction. So it's just having all of these potential barriers in mind. And if these are some of the potential barriers to hearing the baby's voice, what can we do as professionals? So we need to remember some of the principles of attachment. So being responsive, being sensitive, and being consistent. When attunement is difficult, we need to become curious about the obstacles. So much like you would when you're with a baby, you might wonder, what are you trying to tell me? What's going on for you? You can do the same with parents. It's about being alongside them and actually listening to what they have to say about what is going on for them. And it might be all of those different factors we've mentioned, but they really need someone to listen to them and to talk it through. So, and then if we can do that, it might then begin to make space for the baby to be heard. So I want you to always always think relationship. All of this comes down to relationship. Okay, so here are some practical, simple, everyday things you can do in your role to help babies' voices be heard and to support the healthy parent-infant relationships. Remember at the beginning I said that it's the small interventions that actually have a big impact. So these really are everyday things to do. So the first one is to notice the baby. And you may say something to parents like, what do you think your baby is telling us? So you're kind of helping the parents to then tune in, to read their baby's cues. That it gives baby a voice, and it also develops that reflective stance, which is really important. I haven't really gone into reflection today, but a parent's ability to reflect and to be curious and wonder about their baby is really important in that process of seeing that their baby as a separate person to them, a separate little person, and they've got their own mind. That's a really, really important part of secure attachment. So going on from this, you may do lots of wondering aloud instead of giving answers as well. So, for example, you might say, I wonder what he's trying to say, rather than, oh, I think he might be hungry. So you're not sort of putting the answers there. You're kind of helping the parents to really think and wonder out loud about what is this baby telling us. It's really important, if we can, to highlight the strengths that we see in the parent-infant relationship. So things like, oh, look, he loves it when you can hear your voice, or he's really enjoying the way that you're rubbing his back like that. So you might want to slow everything down and pause and watch the baby together for a bit, and really, yes, focus on the positive things that you are seeing. And you also then, by slowing everything down, you're also allowing that space for the baby's voice to come through. We've talked a little bit today about how repair is really important if there have been any ruptures, so you can support that repair and remind parents that it's the reconnection with their babies and children that really matter. So if a parent is feeling bad because they were stressed and a bit snappy with their children, you know, we can really empathise with them and encourage them to now repair with their child. It doesn't mean that's the, you know, the day's over. It's a write-off. These little moments of rupture can be repaired, and we can get back on a more positive mindset with our children. I've mentioned already that your relationship with families is so important, so you can be that secure base for them. You can model that sensitive, responsive care in the way that you are with families. Lots of parents that we work with may never have had someone who interacts with them in that way, so never underestimate the power of that and the impact of that. So being held in the mind of another person is very powerful. It's really needed for children to be held in the mind of adults, but also as adults, we really need to be held in mind as well. You might be curious about them and their baby, what's going on for them, but also respectful and non-judgmental. So when a parent feels judged, that is going to be a major rupture in your relationship with them. They may already be feeling really judged by others. Their parenting may be being judged and assessed through social care, for example. So how can you make them feel safe enough to accept the support that they need? So it's kind of coming back to that secure base and that safety and security. Encourage tasks to be moments of connection. So this is a really important one. So things like everyday care, like nappy changes, feeding, putting their coat on, can be a moment of connection. In my role, I do lots of bringing in songs to, for these moments of connection, and how you can bring in singing with your children into everyday life. But it can just be things like talking to them, really getting down to their level and focusing on them in these tasks that we have to do every day, and they can become quite kind of routine based, but actually they're those little opportunities for little connections and interactions with children. So you can encourage parents to do this, but also, you know, we can do it as well. If you work in an early years setting, how can you make these care tasks as relational as possible? And it's not about having to be all singing, all dancing all the time, but just little subtle moments where that baby or young child really feels seen and heard. And then if you find that your attention is often drawn to the parent because they're in crisis, you can start by being with them and finding out what is hard for them right now, what is going on for them that just needs that little bit more of attention. And by connecting with them, you may find that their nervous system then regulates, and that can make space for the baby. The next one will be one that everyone does all the time, but I think it's important to point out because there is a reason that we do it, and it's actually really, really fundamental and important that we get down to the baby's level, we make eye contact and we talk to them for the baby, but also to model that way of being for the parent. You may wish to reflect on your own ability to attune. So what helps you to notice and respond to children's emotions? What are the things that sometimes might get in the way of you doing that yourself? So we all have things going on in our minds. What helps you to stay attuned? So for example, if you work in a nursery setting, how do you notice and respond sensitively to how children are feeling when they're being dropped off each morning? And you could also consider how you can bring more conversations about emotions into your day-to-day interaction with the children. In the PIMHS team, we've created a resource called Early Thoughtfulness Questions, which I will link to at the end. So these are a series of questions that you can use when talking to parents to open up conversations about their bond with their baby. So how they feel about their baby as a way of assessing what's going on in that parent-infant relationship, which could then flag that they might need some further support from you, or it might be that they need some more specialist support. So these questions help you to explicitly talk about parent-infant bonding. And again, not in a judgmental way, but just highlighting how important it is, so that, you know, their baby's favourite person is their parent, how important skin-to-skin contact is, all the little things that the parents might already be doing that are supporting that bond and getting their baby off to the best start. So it's just normalising these conversations about how important it is, really, and how all the things we've talked about today and how it has an impact on their lifelong health. And the more we practice, and finally being the voice of the baby, which we've talked about a lot today. So the more we practice thinking from the infant's perspective and voicing it, the more babies are seen and heard and understood. I've just remembered I have actually got one more video that I'm going to show. So I've talked a lot about about babies today, and the video I'm going to show next takes it a little bit further in thinking about feelings with children as they grow. So the next video is from the Royal Foundation Centre for Early Childhood, which have some lovely resources. Some of you may have already seen them. There's lots of resources and videos that you can explore more around this topic.
When we talk to babies and young children about what they are experiencing, thinking or feeling, this is called an attuned conversation. We say attuned because it's all about the adult tuning into the child, noticing how they are behaving and thinking about what might be happening in the child's mind or brain in that moment. Why is this important? Well, babies and young children pass through dozens of different emotional states every day, but aren't automatically born with the skills they need to understand and manage these emotions. These skills have to be nurtured as they grow. When we are attuned to children, we help them to identify, make sense of, and manage their own emotions in different ways. First, we watch and listen. How is a child behaving? What expression are they making? What does this tell us about how they might be feeling? Once we have an idea of what's happening for them, there are 3 simple things we can do. Things you might find yourself doing naturally. 1. Show children we have understood their feelings. 2. Name the feelings. And 3. Help them to manage these feelings. For example, when a child cries, they need an adult to notice what's happening and to respond to them in a way that says, "I can see you're feeling upset about something and I'm here to help." Over time, these thousands of simple interactions, an adult noticing, tuning in, and responding give children the ability to manage all kinds of different feelings and recognize them in others, whilst also making them feel loved, seen, and valued. As children get older, we can start to add more depth and detail when we talk with them about their feelings by asking open-ended questions, listening patiently, and showing genuine curiosity. It can also be helpful to talk about how other people manage feelings, including how we manage our own. Books are brilliant for this, as they provide lots of different characters with different feelings to explore. Of course, this isn't always easy, especially if we didn't have this kind of interaction during our own childhood. Sometimes we might misread a child's feelings, and that's fine. All we have to do is notice what happened, reconnect, and try again. By using attuned conversations, you are connecting with a child in the moment and helping to build their social and emotional skills. Skills which are vital for shaping a happy, healthy life.
Okay, so remember that infant mental health isn't about perfection, it's about relationships that are safe enough, responsive enough, and supported enough to allow babies to grow, communicate, and feel understood. So the importance of relationships really needs to be thought about by us as professionals. Our workforce stability matters because relationships matter. So those relationships that you form with families are really important and they do make a difference. So our sensitive, responsive care that we offer benefits all of the children that we come into contact with, but it is especially protective for those facing adversity. So attuned relationships can act like a buffer to reduce the emotional impact of stressful experiences on well-being and development. So I think if relationships are the foundation of healthy development, then protecting our relational environments is not optional, it has to be central. That everything we do comes down to being relational. So finally, with all of this in mind, and hopefully the message that promoting secure attachment and attunement is something that all of us can do, PIMHS does exist as a specialist service to promote infant mental health. So if there is a family that you're concerned about, or you think the emotional well-being of the baby is being impacted by the relationship, we do take referrals to do more specialist therapeutic work with those families. So we work directly from antenatal to 2 years old, but we're also always happy to offer consultation about families if you just need a space to think about them and what's going on and what more you could do with them. We can offer consultation about children up to the age of 7. So the direct work is up to 2, but we do offer consultation for slightly older children as well to help think about their needs and where they might need to be signposted. So this is our team, just so you can see some faces. So we're all mainly part-time, and we work across Gwent with close links to each of the local authorities. And as well as our direct work. So our direct work involves things like video interaction guidance, parent-infant psychotherapy, mental health support, music therapy, watch me play. We also run some specialist groups for families with children under 2. We also, a big part of our role is supporting the early years workforce, which we do through specialist training, consultation, reflective practice and supervision as well. And I've just added some further resources here. So I put the hashtag there for Infant Mental Health Awareness Week. If you look on social media, there's loads of things going on this week in particular. And then I've put some websites here, which have all got brilliant resources and videos. If you look at the social media for each of those organisations as well, there's lots of things going on. I've linked our early thoughtfulness questions to open up those conversations about the parent-infant bond. And we also do offer specialist infant mental health training, which we're just piloting a new way of doing that. So there's some e-learning modules which you do, and then you come to a live workshop with us where we sort of help you to put the theory into practice, and that's open to all early year professionals across Gwent. So the website's there, but also if you want to drop us an email at the PIMHS email address, we'll always get back in touch to point you in the right direction. And thank you for listening.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you ever so much, Belinda. You covered such a lot of ground there. And I know that if we were in a room, if we were in a physical space, then we would have definitely have the applause at this point. So I think we should give a moment for that. Thank you ever so much. Excellent presentation. And just some key messages really that landed with me. That point about babies and children developing in the relationships, and how that helps them to regulate their emotions and understand their emotions. It's just so critically important. That advice that you gave on transitions and separation, and I think sometimes we probably don't always consider it sufficiently, the impact on emotional mental health and attachment when we are thinking about transition to nursery or to school. I was really interested in the section of your talk on technology, and you know, how we support, as a workforce, we support parents to navigate that. And I suppose the critical message there about the risk that technology can interrupt those interactions and those magic moments, but also recognizing that there is an opportunity to repair that, and that if that happens, then, you know, of course the advice and the support for parents and carers is then to provide that moment of full attention and attunement to the baby to sort of repair that rupture, as you put it. And then finally, you know, some really, I think, important messages there about the impact of poverty and inequality, and the cost of living crisis, but how even within that very challenging socioeconomic context, if we can focus on those attuned relationships, they can in fact act as a buffer and a protective factor to some of that wider adversity. So you covered so much, and
I think we could have a webinar on each of those that you've just mentioned.
Exactly. And those are just my sort of distills and takeaway messages. But I just wanted to open it to the floor now to see whether there were any questions or comments or areas that that colleagues would like to discuss in a bit more detail. So please do pop your hand up if you have something that you would like to ask Belinda about. Belinda, whilst people are thinking about that, I had one question, and I was just interested from your practice and the practice within GPIMHS, are there particular aspects of sort of attachment and attunement that parents find most difficult? Do you see themes in what parents and carers struggle with?
A lot of it is to do with the way they were parented. That comes up a lot, and just not having that blueprint for what a parent-infant relationship should look like things like, oh, I never had the opportunity to play. I didn't know, my parents didn't play with me in this way. Like I don't know how to do it. So lots of that comes up, or lots of parents who are so determined to change something about the way they were parented. They don't want to repeat that pattern. So that does come up a lot. And
it's difficult, isn't it? Because you're talking about intergenerational transmission.
Yeah, and they're often still very much supported by their family. So trying to do something different when you're still very much in it, and not wanting to judge that. People know what they know at the time as parents, don't they? So it's trying to have those kind of sensitive conversations around, it's okay if you want to do it differently, but we can do it in a way that feels okay for you and still helps you to be in touch with your family and the support network that you still need as well.
I think that's very interesting, and I think that it's difficult. I'm sure many people from their own lives would have recognised that dynamic where they're trying to do something different to maybe how grandparents would do it or other family members would do it, and navigating that sensitively is undoubtedly very difficult. So that's interesting, but also really recognising, thinking about adverse childhood experiences and trauma that people experience from their own childhood and their own upbringing, but the bold sort of recognition that they want to do something different for their child, but then needing the help to know what that is and how they do it, I think, because it's breaking that chain, isn't it, which is difficult. So yeah, that's fascinating. I can see Heather's popped her hand up, so I'll allow Heather to come in with her question. Heather. Oh, sorry, Heather, I think you're on mute. I still can't hear you. You might have a sticky...
I don't know if everyone's been muted.
I've changed it now, so you can unmute yourself.
Fabulous, they were. I was literally going, I can't get on. Obviously, with your background in sort of the music aspect, I just sort of had wanted to pick your brain a little bit, because I suppose that there's a lot of things online on YouTube. So is it like that Miss Rachel with the singing and the interaction? Obviously, singing to your child is obviously more important than it being on a TV, but I just wondered what your opinion was on something like that, which I imagine, or I know of from experience with friends and family, that they do sometimes have to rely on those sort of things. Do you get the same impact from that, or is it? Yeah.
I have lots of thoughts about this. This is something that comes up all the time, and it seems like every house I go into at the moment watches Miss Rachel. It's like she's the thing. So I again, it's about, I guess, not being judgmental, and saying like I think it does have its place, absolutely, especially when parents do need their children to be occupied for part of the day. I guess I try to encourage as much as possible, like, actually you can sing the songs that Miss Rachel is doing, take the ideas from Miss Rachel, but and you can still watch Miss Rachel, but I encourage families to try and either do it with me or encourage them to do some singing themselves. What songs does your child particularly like? Can you it might be from Miss Rachel, but how can you incorporate that into your day? I guess I emphasize to them that, okay, yes, it's great that they like that, but they're not getting the serve and return from that singing. That's the biggest thing, isn't it? It's the same song every time on the screen.
Yeah.
Whereas if we sing it with our children, we're slowing it down to like interact with how their pacing, their timing. They might pause and do something, and we can respond to that in the moment. So I guess that's the biggest thing that it loses, is all of those important bits.
And so it's like it's that doing it with them, isn't it? Like you say, rather than just leaving them to be doing that, you can be engaging with it and with them and receiving sort of those responses and acting upon those. So yeah, just fascinated. I thought I'd just
and
ask that question.
A first step might be the parents sitting and watching Miss Rachel with their child, because there's lots about screen time at the moment, isn't there, about how it is different if you're actually sitting with your child and engaging in the screen together and it's becoming something you do together. I guess that would be a first step if someone, because lots of parents do say, I can't sing, I'm not very good at singing, I can't, and try and encourage them. Actually, everybody can sing, and your children love your voice. That's really important, especially for young babies.
Thank you.
Thank you for raising that, Heather. Really important point, and sort of reflecting what we're seeing at the moment in practice. So I think good to raise that. And that point there, Belinda, about I suppose how special it is for a baby or a child to hear their parent's own voice. And I suppose quite often parents may not recognise that. That's
all part of the security as well, isn't it? It's that's the voice they're familiar with from before birth as well. So it's that security that in hearing their parents' voice is really important.
Yes, indeed. So and I suppose you'd probably say we could have a whole session on just the music aspect of how music can support.
It's actually quite unusual for me today not to have mentioned music very much, because that can be a whole other
well
one.
Well done, Heather, for raising that. Do we have any other questions? I can't see any other hands up. Okay, so that just leaves me to say, a huge thank you to you, Belinda, for sharing your expertise and your experience with us today. We do have a series of these webinars. The next one will take place on the 13th of August, and that is about screen time. So I'm sure we'll have a lot of interest in that particular webinar. And then the other point that I just wanted to make before we finish is that we do have evaluation forms to gather feedback from you about the utility of these webinars, how you found them useful, and most importantly, how we can improve them as we continue to develop the series moving forward. So please do, if you can, take 2 minutes just to provide us with some feedback. We'd really appreciate that. So that just leaves me to say a huge thank you again to Nisha for all of her work in organising these webinars. Thank you again to Belinda. I hope that I'm giving you 3 minutes back to go and make a cup of tea or coffee before your next meeting, and have a good rest of the day. All. Thank you ever so much. Bye bye now.